Imagine for a moment a life lived in direct, continuous conversation with Jesus and Mary. A life that, well, from the outside, it might have just looked like profound, constant suffering. But inwardly was overflowing with unimaginable joy and truly transformative insight.
Right.
Today, we're not just, studying a text. We're really plunging into the spiritual journey of an extraordinary Italian mystic.
Yeah.
Her writings offer a unique, I think, really potent and utterly captivating path to union with the divine.
That's precisely where our deep dive takes us today. We're focusing on the profound revelations received by Luisa Piccarreta, who is often, affectionately known as the little daughter of the divine will.
Okay.
And our sources for this exploration are her extensive spiritual diaries. It's a remarkable collection spanning decades, really, documenting volumes upon volumes of direct teachings she received. We're talking directly from Christ himself and the Blessed Mother. These aren't just like meditations. They are, in her own words, divine lessons.
Divine lessons. Wow. Okay, so our mission today is kind of multi-layered then. First, we really want to understand the core message of the divine will. What is it? How does it operate? And why is it presented as so central to God's plan?
Exactly.
Second, we need to explore its implications for humanity, which includes this compelling context of its revelation. And as you'll hear, this stuff speaks with surprising relevance to so much of what we experience, right now in the world, even here in Italy today. It really does.
And maybe most importantly, we want to unpack how you, our listener, can begin to practice this transformative way of living. We promise to reveal some truly surprising facts and insights that, honestly, could fundamentally revolutionize your spiritual life. It's a shortcut, in a way, to getting well-informed about a really profound spiritual path.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this. So, who was Luisa Piccarreta? Tell us about her background. Sure. Well, she was a laywoman from Corrado, which is a small town in southern Italy, Puglia, actually. She lived an extraordinary life from 1865 to 1947. And for over 6 decades, basically from her teenage years right up until her death, she was essentially bedridden.
6 decades.
Yeah.
Bedridden.
Yes. And what's even more remarkable, perhaps, is that she was nourished almost solely by the Holy Eucharist. That was her primary sustenance.
Just the Eucharist?
For the most part, yes. Her very existence was, well, it was a testament to the supernatural, you could say. A living anchor in a world that, increasingly struggles to comprehend, let alone embrace, the miraculous.
Absolutely. And she's often called a victim soul, right?
Yeah.
What did that mean in this context?
Right. That's a term in Catholic mysticism for someone believed to be chosen by God to undergo intense suffering, specifically in union with Christ, for the salvation or sanctification of others. It's a profound calling. And she was also called a newborn of the divine will because of the unique way God formed her to live entirely within his own divine life.
Okay, so let's talk about her experiences. What made them so captivating?
I think it's the intense intimacy, the tangible nature of her visions. Jesus often appeared to her not as some distant, imposing figure, but with a tenderness that really defies conventional understanding.
How so?
Well, for instance, she described him appearing as a child, sending flashes of light that, as she wrote back on April 26, 1899, penetrated her entire being. Just imagine that.
Wow.
This wasn't some fleeting intellectual concept. It was a profound, sensory, deeply personal connection that just enveloped her totally. Light so profound, it feels like it's becoming part of you.
And these weren't just like private visions for her own benefit. They had wider meaning.
Exactly. Her relationship with Jesus had broader implications. There's a beautiful anecdote from that same date, April 26, 1899. Luisa, seeing Jesus as this child, offered a prayer for her confessor. She observed he had a speech defect. And she didn't just ask for general healing. She specifically requested that Jesus kiss his mouth, not just his face, so it might be sanctified and strengthened to announce your holy word more freely.
That's incredibly specific. And how did Jesus respond?
What's striking is his immediate and profoundly pleased response. He granted her request. This small detail, it highlights how deeply this divine longing for intimate connection extends, even to sanctifying those who serve God's word, who carry his message. It's a powerful illustration of how our prayers, when they're really united with God's will, can bring about specific, tangible graces for those around us.
This shows a real partnership, doesn't it?
It really does. And the bond between Luisa and Jesus was so constant, so compelling, that on May 16th, 1899, Luisa noted something truly extraordinary. Her sufferings attracted him so much, she wrote, "He could not be without me."
He couldn't be without her.
Yeah.
That's startling.
It is startling. Think about that for a moment. God, in his infinite majesty, described as being so drawn to a soul in union with him that he feels an inability to be separated. Now, this highlights a profound spiritual dynamic. It's not a need on God's part, obviously, but a surprising divine longing for intimate reciprocity in love.
Okay.
It suggests that when a soul enters into this deep union, especially through suffering embraced with love, it creates a bond so powerful that it almost, you could say, compels God's presence. It's a desire for mutual indwelling that really transcends our typical understanding of divine human interaction.
So this incredibly deep personal connection she had, it wasn't just about consolation or these amazing graces. It was deeply tied up with immense suffering.
Yes.
And paradoxically, this suffering wasn't an obstacle, but actually a key, a really profound key to her union with Christ.
Yeah.
Jesus didn't just share wisdom. He shared his actual pain, his bitterness with her.
That's a crucial point, absolutely central to understanding Luisa's spirituality. Her life was marked by deep, often, incomprehensible suffering, frequently felt as though it were directly shared from Jesus. She recounted on May 16, 1899, that Jesus would often pour a little bit more of bitterness from his mouth into mine. It was a direct participation in his passion.
Wow.
And he explicitly taught her the transformative power of this suffering. He told her the cross disposes the soul to patience. He explained that the cross opens heaven and unites heaven and earth together, that is, God and the soul. And it has the power to remove the rust of all earthly things, filling the soul instead with the flavor and the enjoyment of celestial things.
That concept of redemptive suffering
Yes.
is powerful.
It is. It's not about seeking suffering for its own sake, but uniting your trials, whatever they are, with Christ's passion, making them a source of grace, not just for yourself, but for the world.
What about those times when Jesus seemed to withdraw from her? That must have been an incredibly intense kind of suffering, feeling his absence after such closeness.
Oh, undoubtedly. It was one of her most acute pains. Louisa frequently experienced what she called privation, this intense, continuous sense of the absence of Jesus. And this wasn't just like feeling lonely. She described it in August 1904 as pain of fire that ignites, consumes, annihilates.
A pain of fire.
Yes, and its purpose, she understood, was to destroy the human life to constitute the divine. The memory of it, years later, she wrote on August 6, 1901, was so overwhelming that the mere remembering freezes the blood in my veins.
Goodness.
It really underscores that the suffering wasn't arbitrary.
Right.
It was part of a radical internal transformation designed to purify the soul, to strip away all that is merely human, and replace it entirely with the divine life.
Okay, now here's where it gets, for me anyway, really interesting, maybe even counterintuitive for some people. This extraordinary, almost astonishing power of obedience, particularly her obedience to her confessor.
Yes, this is remarkable.
Luisa, in her writings from November 10th, 1899, she recounts this scene where she's enduring immense suffering, and Jesus seems, well, reluctant to release her from it.
Right.
But then her confessor, acting under the church's authority, commands her, absolutely, to have Jesus release her.
Right.
And despite Jesus' initial resistance, Luisa presses him, appealing to his profound love for obedience. She reminds him that obedience was a key too delicate for me and greatly loved by me, a key which had formed the last link by connecting everything into one, the sacrifice of the cross.
And this is truly a profound moment. It highlights a startling dynamic in the divine-human relationship. Jesus, in his infinite power, allowed himself to be, as the text says, forced by obedience.
Forced by obedience.
Yes. He even assumed the appearance of the crucified, sharing the pains of the crucifixion with her in that moment. But crucially, he released her from her own suffering when commanded. Now, this isn't about human will manipulating God in some unholy way. It's about God's infinite respect for the virtue of obedience when it is perfectly aligned with the authority he himself established in his church. It's a testament to the power of a perfectly submitted will.
There's another amazing example, too, isn't there? From February 1900.
Yes, astonishing. February 13th, 1900. Jesus wanted to send scourges upon the world because of its increasing sins. But Luisa's confessor asked her to pray him to stop, to spare humanity.
Okay.
Jesus, again, initially didn't want to obey, expressing his righteous anger. Yet Luisa's unwavering insistence on the preciousness of obedience, reminding him of its divine value, caused him, as she wrote, to be struck by a most acute pain, and he even burst into tears, admitting again that obedience was a key too delicate for me and greatly loved by me.
Wow. That interaction, it really raises important questions about divine freedom and this incredible, almost paradoxical power of human obedience within God's plan. It shows how a single soul, perfectly aligned with God's will through obedience, can literally influence the course of divine justice.
Precisely. It suggests that profound suffering, when it's embraced in union with Christ and rooted in obedience to legitimate authority, becomes not just a personal cross, but a powerful instrument for divine action. It becomes a means of grace, not just for the individual, but for all of humanity. It aligns deeply with Catholic teaching on redemptive suffering, illustrating how personal trials, united with Christ's passion, can contribute significantly to the salvation of souls and even, it seems, alter divine decrees. Luisa's experiences really show how such suffering can literally move the hand of God, influencing that delicate balance between divine justice and mercy in the world.
And these personal sufferings weren't just for her own sanctification. They were deeply intertwined with the state of the world, as you said, and God's response to it.
Right.
Which leads us to a pretty stark but crucial aspect of these revelations, the themes of divine justice and impending chastisements.
Yes, this is a serious part of the message. Jesus expresses profound sorrow, a sense of being wounded by everyone because sin is so widespread. This is from May 16th, 1899. He laments that his justice can take no more.
And it wasn't just a general complaint, was it? He gets quite specific.
Very specific. He offers a kind of divine autopsy of human sin. One major complaint is the abuse of the sacraments. Jesus laments that the sacraments, which are meant to be these powerful channels of grace and life, are often reduced to painted pictures, or like those statues of stone which seem to be alive and operating from afar, but as one draws near them, one begins to discover the deceit. Nothing but mere appearance.
That's a really strong image, painted pictures.
It is. It's a stark warning against external piety, just ritual without internal transformation, without a genuine encounter with God's grace, just going through the motions, basically, without the heart truly engaging.
And it didn't stop there, did it? He spoke about issues within the church itself.
No, he didn't shy away from that. He speaks of the spirit of interest that reigns among the religious as something to be wept over. He says it leads them to degrading their dignity and causes immense scandal among the laity, the secular world.
What kind of
Material interest, ambition. He describes them as having all eyes where there is a most wretched penny, but where there is no interest, they have no hands nor feet to move a tiny bit. It really hits hard, describing how the spirit of material gain and personal ambition poisons their spiritual effectiveness and their credibility.
Yep.
It's a timeless critique, unfortunately, that still resonates.
It certainly does.
Furthermore, in a revelation from November 20, 1917, Jesus grieves that his ministers, meaning priests and religious, sometimes place themselves before him.
How so?
They become obstacles rather than conduits. They end up poisoning souls, causing them to be distracted from God himself, sometimes even leading people away from churches and the sacraments altogether. Now remember, this was written over a century ago in a small Italian town.
Right.
But it speaks with striking immediacy to many contemporary concerns within the church and wider society. It offers a divine perspective on the spiritual health of humanity, emphasizing the profound pain God experiences from sin, especially from those closest to him, those meant to be his most faithful representatives.
And this deep sorrow, this pain God feels over humanity's sins, it leads, almost inevitably it seems, to the necessity of divine intervention.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the form of chastisements.
Yes. Jesus warns of severe consequences because sin has reached such perversity. This is from October 30, 1916. And he makes a chilling yet profoundly important distinction. He says that if souls are lost, it is forever there is no one who can give them back to me.
Forever.
Yes. He prioritizes souls over cities or churches, which, he notes, can be rebuilt. This really highlights the eternal stakes involved. The irreparable loss of an immortal soul is far, far graver in God's eyes than any material destruction.
And the visions Luisa received about these chastisements.
Yeah.
They were quite graphic.
Incredibly vivid, yes, and frankly quite terrifying in their detail. On April 16, 1904, she saw people dropping dead from bombs and gunshots, and enemies killing those who fled to a palace more surely than those who remained outside. Then there are the prophecies of wars, explicitly stated on October 30th, 1916. One nation will invade another, and they will lacerate each other. Blood will flow like water in the towns. And even more, he says, in certain nations, they will become the enemies of themselves, and they will fight one another. They will kill one another. They will do crazy things.
That sounds disturbingly familiar looking back at the last century or so.
It really does seem uncannily prophetic.
And given our current context, particularly here in Italy, with ongoing political and moral discussions, were there specific warnings for Italy?
Yes, there were direct threats Jesus makes concerning Italy itself. On that same date, October 30th, 1916, he speaks of plots against my church, stating that the blood shed in battle is not enough for her. She is thirsty for more blood, but wants the blood of my children, the blood of the primate.
The primate, meaning the Pope.
That's generally understood, yes. This echoes with a powerful urgency when you consider the historical and ongoing challenges to faith and morality, not just in Italy, but globally, where spiritual warfare often manifests in attacks on religious institutions and leaders.
And there was something specific about divorce laws in Italy, too.
Yes, directly tied to that. Back in December 1902, Luisa saw demons actively trying to implement a law permitting divorce in Italy. This gives us insight into the spiritual battle often happening behind major societal changes.
Demons actively working for it.
That's what she saw. Jesus even hinted at a Chinese thunderbolt as a potential divine intervention to prevent it, a powerful, unexpected, almost miraculous act of God to halt what he saw as a grave moral offense. And then later that month, December 18th, 1902, Luis is repeatedly called to suffer specifically to conquer the obstinacy of those who want divorce.
Her suffering was meant to counter it.
Directly. And what's remarkable is that the demons themselves, in her visions, explicitly recognized her suffering as a direct impediment to their plans. They even threatened to move bishops, priests, and people against her to make her drop her whim of accepting sufferings. It reveals just how integral her suffering was to God's plan for mercy in that specific situation.
It really sounds like her suffering was almost a literal spiritual shield, holding back divine justice.
That's a good way to put it.
And it wasn't just Jesus expressing the sorrow. The Mother of God herself was involved.
Deeply involved.
Yeah.
On November 12, 1917, Mary appeared to Luisa crying because the fire of divine justice would want to devour everything, and heartbreakingly because the fire of sins devours all the good of souls. This isn't just, a poetic image. It paints a picture of heaven itself weeping over humanity's state, emphasizing the profound urgency for change.
That's incredibly moving.
It vividly underscores the critical importance of intercessory prayer and redemptive suffering in God's plan. Jesus reveals that justice and mercy are in a continuous fight within the divine heart, and the suffering of a soul perfectly united with my will helps mercy win victories, as he explained on September 11th, 1910.
Continuous fight.
Yes, and there's even this astonishing instance where Jesus actually suspends Luisa from her mystical state. He temporarily pulls her out of that deep union with him, precisely so that certain chastisements can proceed freely. He tells her on April 21st, 1903, "It was necessary for me to suspend you, otherwise you would have prevented me and I would not have been free."
He had to suspend her so he could act. That's mind-blowing.
It is profound. It's a living illustration of the interconnectedness of all spiritual reality, revealing the extraordinary power God grants to a soul living completely in his will. She could literally hold back his arm, so to speak.
So while these warnings are incredibly stark, really serious, they always seem to lead towards the ultimate solution, the ultimate hope that just permeates all of Luisa's revelations, the coming or maybe the reestablishment of the kingdom of the divine will on earth.
Yes, that's truly the beating heart of her entire message, the ultimate goal.
Okay, so let's dive into that. What is this divine will according to these revelations? It's clearly more than just God's commands or rules.
Oh, far more. The sources describe it as something incredibly expansive, dynamic. It is eternal, immense, universal, described as a sea of light from which all creation springs forth. It's called the motor of everything and the life, foundation, support, vivification, and preservation of everything that came out of our creative hands. This is emphasized again and again across the volumes.
Life, foundation, support.
Exactly. It possesses infinite qualities: power, wisdom, goodness, beauty, and it never ceases its constant loving acts. It's the very breath of existence itself.
And Jesus used analogies to help explain it, right?
Yes, he did, which makes it much more accessible to our human minds. On August 12, 1912, he used the analogy of the sun. Think about it. The sun rises majestically, but it's always fixed in its essence. It doesn't really move.
Yeah.
Yet from that fixed position, it invades the entire earth with its light and makes plants grow, gives life to everything. And it does this huge work without clamor, without saying even a word, without demanding anything. Doesn't bother anyone, doesn't take up space, but its power is undeniable. Just like the sun, the divine will is always there, fixed, constantly giving, not demanding.
That's a beautiful image.
And as Volume 19 puts it beautifully, the divine well, like the sun, is pounding on her the soul. Its light transforms her and gives her the different colors of the beauty of her creator. It's a living light that acts upon and transforms the soul from within.
And there was another analogy, too, something about breath.
Yes. On February 6, 1930, Jesus uses an even more intimate, almost startling analogy. He says, "My divine will is breath without body. The creature is the body. My will is the breath. The body without the breath is dead."
Wow, the breath within the body.
Precisely. This really helps us grasp the pervasive, life-sustaining nature of the divine will. It's not meant to be just an external command you follow. It's meant to be the very life force, the very breath animating every cell, every action within us. Without it, our spiritual life is, well, inert, lifeless.
So the analysis here is crucial. The divine will isn't just an abstract command. It's a living, active, omnipresent reality that sustains everything.
That's it. And God, in his infinite love, desired to create the human will specifically to engage in a reciprocal love with him, a contest of love, as he calls it.
Contest of love.
Yes. Unlike the mute silence of other created things that simply obey, God wanted humanity to respond consciously, freely, lovingly to his will, making their acts their own, while still being entirely his act within them. This reciprocity, this mutual outpouring of love between the creator and the creature, is presented as the highest expression of love possible, far surpassing simple passive obedience. It's really an invitation to co-create with God.
Okay, so given this incredible understanding of what the divine will truly is, what happens when a soul genuinely chooses to live in this all-encompassing divine will? What does that transformation actually look like? What are the effects?
Well, the ultimate purpose of creation and redemption, as Jesus repeatedly revealed to Luisa, is for humanity to return to living in the divine will, on earth as it is in heaven. This, Jesus declares flat out on February 8, 1904, is the greatest and most honorable worship that the creature can render me.
The greatest worship.
Yes. It's not just about doing good actions here and there. It's about a total surrender of one's own human will to the divine will, allowing God's will to become the very motor, the very breath of one's entire being and every single action.
And the transformation described is, well, it sounds radical, a complete union with the divine.
Totally profound. The soul living in the divine will literally acquires divine features. She becomes one from their family, admitted to their secrets. That's from December 27, 1921. Think about that, admitted to the secrets of the Trinity.
Incredible intimacy.
Absolutely. On February 8, 1904, Jesus explains how the soul's mind lives in God's mind. Her eyes look through God's eyes. Her mouth speaks through God's mouth. Her heart loves through God's heart. Her hands operate in God's hands. Her feet walk in God's feet. She quite literally becomes God's eye, mouth, heart, hands, and feet on earth.
His very senses and limbs.
Acting as his instrument, yes, fully imbued with his life. This is the essence of being a newborn of my will. The soul literally becomes an act of the divine will, acquiring a kind of divine right over all its acts. That's from volume 22.
How does that happen? Is it passive?
No, not passive at all. It involves, as she wrote on January 7, 1921, continuous deaths to the human being and continuous life to the divine will. It's a moment-by-moment emptying of self-will, allowing the divine will to form its operating life within her, as described on June 19, 1929. It's a complete spiritual metamorphosis where the divine gradually takes over, transforming everything from the inside out.
And the reach, the spiritual power of this transformed soul, it sounds almost unbelievable, universal.
Astonishingly so. On October 7, 1934, we read that the soul who lives in the divine will becomes inseparable from heaven, from the sun, from the whole of creation. Even more astonishingly, her acts are described as being more powerful than the sun itself, eclipsing heaven, the saints, the angels. That's from July 26, 1926.
Eclipsing heaven. How is that even possible?
Think about it. This isn't just poetic language. It's describing a soul whose acts, because they are imbued with the infinite divine will, participate in the very power and universality of God's own creative acts. And her simple, "I love you," when said in the divine will, is so powerful that it gets impressed on every created thing. The sea, the sun, the wind, even the birds start to speak her loving refrains back to God. That's from September 4, 1927. It's as if her love becomes infused into creation itself.
That's beautiful. And what about the afterlife? You mentioned something revolutionary there.
Yes, this divine union has incredible and frankly revolutionary implications for the afterlife. Jesus states a profound truth on February 8, 1904. For one who lives of his most holy will, purgatory does not exist.
No purgatory at all.
That's what he says. Because, he explains, purgatory touches those who live outside of me, whether completely or in part. The divine will, by its very nature, forms an anticipated purgatory, purging the soul of weaknesses and stains in advance while still on earth. That's detailed on October 7, 1934. It's a purification that begins right here, right now, making the soul ready for immediate union with God upon death. It's already been cleansed by the constant action of the divine will within.
Wow. Okay. And then there's this idea of divine fecundity. What's that about?
Right. By letting herself be entirely dominated by the divine will, the soul receives the divine fecundity within herself and can generate in others the good which she contains. That's from November 27, 1927. So this means she doesn't just become personally holy, she becomes a source, a generator of holiness for others.
Like a spiritual powerhouse.
Exactly. She produces life of sanctity, life of love, life of light, beauty, power, and wisdom, as November 26, 1938 says. This isn't just about personal holiness, it's about becoming a channel, a fertile ground of divine life, making one's spiritual efforts bear fruit for the entire mystical body of Christ. You become a source of grace.
And the joy God finds in such a soul.
It's described as boundless. He finds his heaven in the creature, who lives entirely in his will. That's from October 2010, 1933. He finds sweet rest and perfect return, April 25, 1938, because the creature has finally returned to the original purpose, the original harmony for which she was created.
And for the soul herself.
For the soul, it's a continuous sweet enchantment, a labyrinth of love, and a happiness that never ends. That's from June 19, 1929 and October 7, 1934. It's complete fulfillment, a state of perfect harmony and joy where the divine and human wills are perfectly, beautifully aligned.
Okay, so we've explored the incredible consequences of living in the divine will. What's the flip side? What happens when the human will asserts itself, when it acts outside of or even against the divine will?
Well, when the human will takes primacy, Jesus says it creates a shade that prevents the divine light from entering and illuminating the soul. It produces sloth, sleep, sluggishness. That's December 8, 1922. It literally darkens the soul's capacity for grace.
It blocks the light.
Yes, it ruins our design, he says, and counterfeits this page of God's love, July 24th, 1932. Because our own will, our self-will, introduces flaws, imperfections into God's perfect plan for us. It causes miseries with weakness, with passions, leaving the divine life within us broken and as detached. October 30th, 1932.
Broken and detached.
And this is critical. By asserting our own will, we actively hinder God's creative work within us. We, as Jesus puts it quite starkly, bind his arms, December 2nd, 1935. We prevent the full outpouring of grace and the full realization of his beautiful plan for humanity. It's really a tragedy of missed opportunities for divine action within us and through us.
It makes the stakes incredibly high. This incredible potential, this life in the divine will, it's not just theoretical, as you said. It's a living reality. And it finds its most perfect, its most astonishing example in the Queen of Heaven herself, Mary.
Absolutely.
Her role in the divine will seems absolutely central, not just as a passive recipient, but as an active, powerful queen and mother.
That's exactly right. Her role is pivotal. The Immaculate Conception itself was described as a prodigious and all-marvelous event, something that astonished heaven and earth. That's from December 8th, 1922.
How so? What made it so unique?
Well, the sources paint this vivid picture. All three divine persons of the Trinity competed, you could say, pouring out immense seas of power, wisdom, and eternal love. And it was right in the center of this overflowing divine ocean that Mary's conception was formed. This wasn't just a passive reception of grace. It was an active, unparalleled infusion of divine life into a human soul from the very first instant.
An ocean of divine life.
Exactly. Mary's little nature was conceived in the center of this sea of divine attributes. And immediately she was given the use of reason and all sciences, allowing her, the text says, to come to heaven and embrace the divine persons, even from the moment of her conception in St. Anne's womb. That's also from December 8, 1922. It signifies her unique, unprecedented perfection, a soul perfectly unburdened by original sin, a pure, flawless tabernacle for God's will.
So Mary is presented as the first and the most perfect newborn of my will. That's from volume 19. She was formed in the perfect likeness of her creator from the very start.
Precisely. Her human will perfectly, seamlessly received the dominion of the divine will, allowing God to perform prodigies of graces in her, according to June 19, 1929. And she was, interestingly, called Queen of Sorrow and of Love from the very first instant of her life, grieving with a divine sorrow over every sin of creatures. That's October 7, 1934. Her singular purity and complete alignment with the divine will made her the perfect vessel, the perfect model for God's plan for humanity to return to living in his will.
And her fiat, her yes to God. It wasn't just a one-time thing at the Annunciation.
No, not at all. That's a key insight. Her fiat was a continuous living reality that permeated every fiber of her being, every breath, every thought, every action throughout her entire life. This is why she truly becomes the model for all of us who seek to live in the divine will. Her life demonstrates the practical reality and the transformative power of allowing the divine will to reign absolutely within a human soul. And this perfection made her the perfect instrument for the inauguration of the kingdom of the divine will on earth.
So her role extends beyond just her fiat, or even her part in the redemption.
Far beyond. The Sacrosanct Trinity explicitly entrusted the kingdom of the divine will to me, Mary. This is Mary herself revealing this to Luisa on December 2nd, 1935.
The Trinity entrusted the kingdom to her. That's staggering.
It is a staggering revelation. It means God himself entrusted the very establishment of this kingdom on earth to his mother. Her yearning for this kingdom to triumph is described as ardent, her prayers incessant, as she continually assaults the most holy Trinity with her love. That's also from December 2nd, 1935. This shows an active, powerful maternal intercession, not just a passive waiting. It's also said that her obtaining of the redemption laid the foundations of the kingdom of my will, from volume 23, preparing the ground, essentially, for this next ultimate stage of divine life in souls. She is actively working to draw humanity back to this perfect way of living.
And her maternal love for us. How's that described?
In truly powerful terms, she wants to generate in each creature Jesus. And she wants to form as many mamas for her Jesus in order to place him in safety and so that no one may offend him anymore. Again, December 2nd, 1935.
Form other mothers for Jesus within us. That's beautiful.
It's a startling, beautiful image, Mary actively forming other mothers for Christ within humanity so that he might be loved, adored, and safeguarded within each soul. And she feels more honored, more glorified if Jesus himself reveals what your mama can do for her children who live in the divine will, same date, just delighting in showing her boundless care for us.
So she's actively working for this kingdom.
Yes, it highlights her active, ongoing role as queen and mother, diligently working to establish the divine will as the very life of her children on earth. She is, in a sense, waiting for her heirs, that's us, humanity, to take full possession of this great inheritance of living in the divine will. Her maternal love is so immense that she desires those who live in the divine will to partake in everything I did to my son, August 9th, 1925, inviting them into a shared divine life, a complete absorption into the very acts of Jesus and Mary themselves. She is our guide, our teacher, and our mother on this profound journey.
Okay, so with this profound understanding of what the divine will is, what it promises, and Mary's absolutely central role in bringing it about, how can we, the listeners, truly begin to live this life? It's clearly not about just knowing these truths academically. It's about embodying them, making them our own.
Right, and the sources provide clear, practical guidance. It begins with a fundamental decision. The very first step, as Jesus reveals on October 7, 1934, and again on December 2nd, 1935, is an immutable firmness to want to live of my will.
Immutable firmness.
Yes, letting it reign and dominate within you and deciding at any cost never to do her own will. This isn't just a casual intention like, oh, I'll try to do God's will today. It's a radical, permanent, unwavering choice to surrender your human will. It involves actively emptying the human will of all that is human, of all that is not holy, pure, and upright, as Volume 16 advises. You have to remove anything that is not from God or for God to make space.
So it's not enough to just intend to do God's will in a general sense. It requires something more active, more continuous.
Exactly. The teachings emphasize that it requires an active, conscious engagement throughout your day, throughout your life. January 7, 1921, emphasizes that the soul must consciously give the shape of my mind to her mind, the shape of my gaze, of my word, of my motion to hers.
Give God's shape to your own.
Yes. By doing this, she loses her shape and acquires mine. She does nothing other than give continuous deaths to the human being and continuous life to the divine will. This means that every breath you take, every heartbeat, every word you speak, every action you perform is to be consciously done in the divine will. This is stressed on February 6, 1930, November 26, 1925, and in Volume 35. It's a dynamic, moment-by-moment process of surrender, where your small human will is constantly being subsumed into the infinite divine will. Imagine your consciousness becoming infused with God's own consciousness, so that you begin to see, think, and act as he does.
That sounds like a complete immersion, a constant state of prayer almost. How do specific acts of love or adoration fit into this continuous living in the divine will?
That's a core practice. You make a continuous offering of I love you, thank you, adoration, I bless you, not just from yourself, but upon all created things, and crucially, with the power of the supreme fiat.
The supreme fiat. meaning God's creative power.
Exactly. The fiat here refers to God's all-powerful creative let it be, or yes. This is explained on November 23, 1925, and in Volume 28. This I love you that you express through the divine will becomes incredibly nourishment for the divine fiat growing within you. That's from April 25, 1938. And when you do this, God finds our love made her own to love us, as stated in Volume 30.
So you're loving God with God's own love.
Precisely. It becomes a constant dialogue of reciprocal love. You're making your love a channel for God's own love operating in creation and effectively allowing your small human I love you to become infinite through him. You're not just loving God, you're loving as God loved, with the power of his own infinite love flowing through you and back to him, multiplied across all creation.
And it seems absolutely crucial to understand these profound truths, not just intellectually, but really absorb them deep within the heart.
Absolutely vital. Each knowledge brings the growth of the life of my will in you, states February 15th, 1931. Seeking to understand these truths revealed about divine will is paramount because they are described as doors of light, of grace, of divine communications, May 30, 1925. This isn't just about intellectual assent, knowing the facts. It's about internalizing these divine realities, meditating on them, praying with them, and allowing them to deepen your actual participation in the divine will. The more you comprehend what it means to live in the divine will, the more capacity your soul develops to actually live it. Knowledge fuels the fire.
But what about suffering? Louisa's life was so full of it. Does that mean we have to seek out suffering to live this way? Is that the path for everyone?
That's a really important question. While Luisa was clearly a victim soul with the specific extraordinary mission, the principle for all of us is perseverance in whatever suffering or privation comes our way. Jesus teaches that even in the hardest of martyrdoms, July 24th, 1932, or the inevitable privations, those periods of spiritual dryness or the felt absence of Jesus that everyone experiences, one must remain constant in good and neglect nothing. November 17th, 1917. It's about consistency. Such constancy in accepting what God permits, rather than actively seeking out extraordinary suffering, is what squeezes out self-love and purifies the soul, preparing it for deeper union. It's about embracing the daily crosses that come your way, big or small, with a spirit of surrender, transforming them into acts of love done in the divine will.
So it's about acceptance and perseverance in what comes, not seeking it out.
Exactly.
And there's that truly amazing promise regarding purification, which brings us back to something we touched on earlier about purgatory. Can you remind us of that?
Yes, and this is perhaps one of the most astonishing promises associated with living in the divine will. Just by making that firm, immutable decision to live in the divine will, it begins to act as an anticipated purgatory.
Anticipated purgatory.
Yes, it purges the soul of anything that might prevent that a life of divine will be formed in her. So that, as October 7, 1934 explains, if the creature dies having made and maintained this firm decision, my will itself will carry her in its arms of light as its triumph directly into heaven. No stopover.
Wow.
It's an immediate purification achieved through the sheer power of the divine will itself operating within the soul, making it ready for perfect union from the very moment of death.
So this is clearly not some passive reception of grace. It is an active, continuous, conscious choice that profoundly transforms your very being. It brings, as the texts say, unparalleled joy to God and immeasurable blessings to the soul, both in this life and the next.
Exactly. It's a call to co-create, to cooperate with God in every single moment, transforming the ordinary into the divine, making every human act potentially a divine act. It's presented as God's original plan for humanity finally being restored.
What an extraordinary journey we've taken today. Really extraordinary. We've journeyed through the astounding life of Luisa Piccarreta, this mystic who literally lived in continuous conversation with Jesus and Mary.
Mm-hmm.
We've grasped the profound urgency of divine justice, the face of widespread human sin, and maybe most importantly, we've explored the truly transformative nature and the, astonishing power of living in the divine will, beautifully guided and championed by the intercession and boundless maternal love of the Blessed Mother.
We've heard how Jesus describes his divine will as the breath without body in each creature, and how doing one's own human will, in contrast, blows and smothers everything, leaving the soul in darkness. That was from February 6, 1930, and Volume 32. It's such a powerful, stark contrast, essentially, life versus spiritual death.
So here's something to really think about. If God's ultimate purpose in creating us was to have this continuous reciprocal outpouring of love, where we act with him, for him, and in him, allowing his divine will to truly become our own lives, our very breath, then what greater act of love What greater act of profound freedom could we possibly offer back to him than to abandon our own will entirely? What if we truly allowed the divine will to breathe, palpitate, and act fully within us, transforming our lives into a continuous living fiat, a resounding, unwavering yes to God in every single moment, just as Mary's entire life was one perfect, continuous fiat? What would that actually mean for your own life right now, for your relationships, and indeed for the world around you, if you truly became an instrument, a living act of the divine will?
That's the question, isn't it? And this deep dive, it's really just the beginning. The journey into the divine will is described as an endless adventure, an invitation to discover God's ceaseless love and power in every aspect of your life, transforming not just your soul, but through you, potentially the very fabric of creation.
So much to reflect on. This has been the deep dive.